and I'm going to move okay, let's get started. And I, I'm going to begin with, of course, an acknowledgement to a number of people you see listed on the screen in front of you. And by the way, this presenter can be controlled by everyone, so please don't click on those buttons. If you do, you'll advance to the next slide. So, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge Gunnar Schweddy, who has, without a doubt, is the person most responsible for where we are with virtual worlds today. So, everything you see here today was built primarily, or if not completely, by Gunnar, and I think Athabasca is very fortunate to have a person of Gunnar's talents working here and thinking about the future of distance education. And Carmen Southgate, in fact, all the people you see on the board in front of you have had a major kind of role in where we are today. Carmen Southgate couldn't be here today. In fact, a number of people couldn't be here today because of other commitments. When we put this session together, we were kind of running on borrowed time. Our rent ran out in the middle of October, so things could disappear as we speak. So we did want to get something put together before the island disappeared completely. But I am glad that we did get a pretty good turnout for those in world. And the other people you see listed there, Mike Proctor, Sandra Law, Gabriella Hush, who is listed, even though she is not involved with the group. In fact, I think she's retired, but she was actually the one who presented or first draw attention to virtual worlds and gave a presentation to the School of Business back in March of 2007. Mary Pringle has also been involved throughout the last 6 years. And on the academic side, we have Dave Anand, Oscar, Terry, Evelyn Ellerman has been paying for the island a year and a half. Raphael Fauché, Paul Jerry has been a strong supporter, and Trevor Gilbert has in fact got a ecology lab on the island here. And I don't mean to forget anyone, so I've included the Virtual World Development Group because there have been people throughout the years that have sort of come and gone, but have committed time sort of sporadically, but importantly. So if I've forgotten anyone, I do want to catch them with the Virtual World Development Group. Gunnar, could I ask you to advance the slide, because I'm in mouse view and I don't think I can control them that way. Thank you. So as I mentioned, this is really a historical retrospective for those that are familiar. I know Mark Sells and Martin. The rest of you are probably aware of what obviously we've done on the island for the last 6 years. But this is a way to capture the successes and not so much successes over the last 6 years, because I think there are some important lessons that we can learn from this. And so what I've done really is just I'm going to highlight some of the developments over the last 6 years. I've already mentioned that it was Gabriella who sort of, and I'm sure there were others involved as well. It was Gabriella who in March first gave a presentation that drew attention to the potential of virtual worlds. In fact, in looking over from that presentation, she identified of key areas of development, including Sloodle, which is the plugin for Moodle that works with Second Life. The first meeting of Second Life at AU Development Group was April 24th, 2007, and I've listed the people who attended that meeting. And while some of these people aren't with us now, but even early on in our development, we provide representation from across the university, School of Business, Center for Psychology, Center for Distance Ed, EMD, now known as CLDD, and the library. We also had student groups involved with us early on, as the next slide will show, if you could advance it, Gunnar. Here is actually the blueprint, and although it's really hard to see with the slide, but these are the original blueprints that Gunnar had together that identified a number of key areas. There's an information center. We had an observatory for Martin. We had a kiosk, information kiosk. Gunnar had some really future forward-looking building designs. We had meeting spaces. And at the center, of course, the arrival area, a very nice homage to Athabasca University. So, and I think that design feature has been retained throughout all the various versions that the island has undergone. It's amazing, in my mind, how many buildings have come and gone on the island since its first conception. Next slide. Here we have a screen capture of that early design. It was pretty much exactly as the blueprints were conceived. And while we could go through some screenshots of the island from those early years, you'll see that in this presentation I've included a lot of links. I'll post those this presentation on our AU landing site, and where those links will be live, or at least accessible, so you can actually go and visit through YouTube videos, some of the earlier versions of the island. Next slide. One of the things that we also did early on is we did sort of try to recreate elements of the actual AU campus of Alaska. Here you can see the pond feature outside of the main building. And while there's been discussion of whether or not institutions should be replicating their campuses in Second Life for virtual, with a real split. There's a number of high-profile institutions that have done exactly that, replicated their campus, and others have argued that it works with Moodle. What it does is it allows in the virtual world in Moodle databases. So shares, which on the island, students can answer and in some way we're paralleling what other educators are doing in Second Life. 2007, the TV show CSI New York showcases Second Life, a bit of a high point. And in November 2007, Dave and Ann Gunnar and Gabriella and Mike gave a lunch um, to the AU community, where they focused on some of the formal learning opportunities, the other presentation, Dave and Ann. More, well, realism side of things. So in 2008, Google announced Lively, which was a virtual world for Google. Really catch on. Um, in fact, I don't know if it's still available. In July, we were seeing about 200 on our island. Um, to withdraw for a year. Oh, Google's closed. Okay. And fortunately, Dave did come back following year, but take away some of our inertia or momentum. In 2008, Gunnar was presenting with OpenSim, and we'll be going to OpenSim hopefully after this presentation. And in 2008, we had created these loaner avatars, because one of the problems we were finding is that people seemed to object or had trouble coming or creating an account to come into Second Life. In 2008, the dates I don't have here, but a labyrinth was created by Gunnar and Carmen as a way to sort of activities that could be implemented for students that sort of captured some game-like elements. In 2008, so we were still meeting quite regular. There was a lot of positive readings. Next slide, please. Oh, here's Freudbot's office. This was in a space up in the sky. It's still there today. Next slide, please. Freudbot has been, again, relatively successful. The number of visits on a yearly basis, although you can see that the visits on AU Island have declined recently. And there was a sort of a collaboration with Montclair in 2008 and 2009. They closed their island in 2009, I believe, or shortly thereafter. And you can see that we had far more action on Freud than we did at AU. For that is that Montclair was really dedicated to psychology. In fact, this project, it was undertaken by Adina Gumbo, and she had put together a bill, filed some of the major theorists in including Freud. So we were asked there, which we did, and we did get a lot. It was a lot of classroom traffic. The experience sort of solidified for me the importance of being, say, focused on disciplinary content. On an island, I've always sort of thought that if we could convince, say, other psychologists, or I'm just using psychology as a discipline here, but if there was a kind of a psychology commons kind of a build, so that all things psychology were available, we'd get that kind of critical mass and the sort of serendipitous kinds of interactions that underlie some of the informal learning opportunities. So for us, it really highlighted the importance of having a sort of a or a subject area concentration. The Freudbot did generate got them listed there, and certainly it's not all the that people did about their Montclair or at the back. And for the most part, these blogs were Um, and I just hang on here. Um, and in 2009, we created a Moodle site. Again, we have a link there. You can go to that site, and there's a lot of resources that we put on that site. 2009, Second Life Enterprise was announced. This was a, a, a response institutions, educational institutions had about working with Second Life there as a proprietary uh, the storage of data on Life Enterprise was a product that you could run on your own servers. It was, I think, around, I may be wrong here, around $30,000 or something. But it had the appeal, of course, of being, behind institutional firewalls. So, although we tried to see if AU would purchase it or consider it, we never really got traction on that. Also in 2009, the AU's association put together a survey to uh, inquire about virtual world for their student demographic. 4 meetings in 2009, and I think so. I don't want to say you'll see that we it sort of keep our meetings going. In 2010, though, we did get money from the Center for Research Center, and FHSS to host a workshop, and I thought it was a pretty successful one. It was at Edmonton downtown. We had a full slate. It was an and we uh, tried to um, most notably Moodle, and the way Sloodle would allow us to work with our Moodle course pages. the off, it's still been a very good tool, I think, for the island. In August, Mayo Clinic opened up a bookstore in Second Life, so we're still getting interest in Second Life. In 2010, though, and this was maybe, well, I don't want to be too dramatic, but a bit of a death knell for educational institutions in Second Life, because they did announce the end of their educational pricing, which was basically it doubled the price. The educational pricing was about half, so it normally costs dollars a month to rent space. You have purchased an island, and without the educational discount, it's about $300 a month. But it did, when Second Life made this announcement, there was a exodus. Don't have numbers on how many educational life in 2010. And this was announced in October till January. It's interesting to note that just 6 months ago, Second Life reinstated their educational pricing. So, but I don't know. I don't think it drew people back. I think as a result of this announcement, a lot of people moved into OpenSim, and I think that's where the future lies. Myself, in 2010, Gooder again put together created the Athabasca Research Building, and I believe Fritz was using it to in some of his presentations. It was a fly, one of those crews, and those. So presentation to AU Island. This was sort of a earlier ones, but it was revised to include the ARC. There was also some different kinds of learning experiences and simulations in Second Life. Programmable avatars. Mike was responsible for that one, and a psychology life created by Trevor. So these videos are available on YouTube. The links, you can check them out if you'd like. And while link is there as well. 2010, Second Life announced their web viewer, which was one of the things that makes traveling in Second Life a little harder, I guess, for some, is that you have to download a client, and there's not much. I mean, but some people find it an account in Second Life and manage it. With the web viewer, this use your explore your internet browser to go into Second Life. So and I don't know, maybe knows what became web viewer. I know web viewers most notable is Jive, I think. Works with the Unity gaming engine. But this is an important making it easier to, if you only have your thanks, Gunnar. If your browser, I think it's a lot of people to get into virtual. We only had 4 meetings in 2010, and but it was still a good year. In 2000, our Connect was announced. I was really hopeful take off, but I don't think they ever announced it. This was the idea that you could, and using the Connect Xbox device, you could, meet with your and share some virtual space with the video recognition software of Connect, sort of projecting your image into this virtual space. It just never came out, and I never found out why. Pro Gunnar accepts the Sue and Derek Rollison Award, well deserved. In 2011, to our Moodle roadmap. In 2011, this tuning in today was built to host the speaker series in the summer of 2020 from the VPA to uh, to. And this was an idea that Raphael came up with and that the group supported. Next slide, please. In 2011, we had six speakers come through. Sabine Lala Sweljek talked about the presence of avatars, speaking to the sort of social presence that avatars can project. We had our collaborators, Doug Danforth and Mary Johnson, present on virtual patient presentations. Anna Peachy from the Open University gave a talk on how her institution used virtual worlds, and OpenU is still got a fairly active virtual world in Second Life called Deep Think, and they are fairly regularly posting gatherings on Deep Think. Some of it is social, and some of it is academic. John Lester, a former Linden lab worker known as Pathfinder Linden, talked about integrating virtual worlds into education. Tom Bellistorff, well-known anthropologist, wrote a fairly significant book on Second Life culture in a virtual world, gave a presentation, and Oscar and Steve talked about their work in Open Wonderland as well. Most of these, I believe all of these were recorded, some using Adobe Connect, and others were recorded with video. Gunnar captured video directly. So although the links for the video that Gunnar captured, I had the wrong links, so I couldn't add them in here. But I'll see if I can get them in the down, please. Now this is where on at the university, and I took on a role with the faculty, but there was still some interesting stuff going on. I did meet with her at that time and got a sense for her commitment to virtual spaces. We did Gunnar again set up a quiz lab. Chairs were set up. Gunnar at this time also in August OpenSim, and although again we were sort of scrambling for money in September, I did approach CDE, Faculty of Science, FHSS, Faculty of Health Disciplines, and Faculty of Business, and they were all good for paying rent for another year. In the end, the research center stepped up to take care of the rent, but I think it reflected excuse me, I think it reflected a nice commitment, across the university to the, the value of these virtual spaces. Please. And we have another update, Gunnar, on OpenSim, and we'll be going to OpenSim afterwards for those. And also perhaps our greatest success of 2013 is we had another virtual convocation celebration. This one was unlike the first one in 2009, which was focused on School of Business graduates. 2013 virtual convocation, we sent out invitations to all graduates, And we, while the numbers may not be impressive, in fact, there were only about 40 or so graduates that expressed interest and attended. We did have 3 sessions in June, and those students that came out were very appreciative, and they brought their family along with them, and their family was equally appreciative. It was a feel-good event for sure. We got a lot of positive feedback from those that did attend. We even got some tweets on the event. So I think there's real value to hosting these kinds of events, virtual convocations. But there may be other one-off kinds of events that virtual spaces can, a venue. And I think, I think these are one of the of our work over the last 6 years. Uh, there's a student that supervising that collected data, and she's going to be uh, presenting or writing that up shortly. So I think that really brings up to the and just next slide. There's just some observations I'd like to make, and then we can open it up for discussion. First of all, I want to acknowledge Paul Jerry, because he's the one that first mentioned important uh, consider when we look at where virtual worlds are today. If slide, I don't. Yeah, this might be hard unless you're using a camera. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the Gartner hype cycle or hype curve, and my voice is almost out. But you can see that there's these sort of 5 periods of a technology life cycle. There's the so-called technology trigger, the peak of inflated expectations, the trough of disillusionment, and the slope of enlightenment. And you get to the point where there's a plateau and of productivity. And this graph sort of shows or provides some for when things follow this path. Not all technologies, and I have to be honest, I don't know the data behind this graph well enough to, but it does seem to capture a lot of technology goes through, and the key part is, so where is Second Life in all of this? Well, if you go to the next slide, I don't know if you can. This was in 2010, and Gardner had placed public virtual worlds at probably the lowest part of the trough of disillusionment. You can see it may be hard to make out, but it's the second dot to the right of that pink dot. That's where public virtual worlds were in this sort of trough of disillusionment. 2 years later, 2012. Next slide, please. It's uh, Many technologies may not come out of the trough. Um, Well, yes, which is why I think texting is always uh, had a place in Second Life. Um, I'm not sure what to suggest, Terry. Um, Aside from going to preferences and seeing if you can't make sure that your mic is the right mic. It's I'm surprised. Well, I don't know how well the sound quality was. It sounds like I was breaking up, but I hope I was audible enough to uh, get get the message across.
Bob, I might take a shot at talking. Anybody can hear me?
Yep, I can hear you, Paul.
Okay, I'll just give a brief then. I've been involved with experiential learning in virtual worlds working group out of England for the last about 3, 4 years now. We have, in the three, no, 4 edited books and another one coming out, mainly conference proceedings, but also extended works based on the conferences from a variety of researchers using, I wouldn't say primarily Second Life, but definitely virtual world sim and the emphasis on Second Life, partly because it's a public space that can be accessed by many. My own research has been on behavior within Second Life of other people, but again, we've seen a lot of interest in innovation. But talking about cycle, which we used as a concept in the last book, it's interesting. Last year we had 46 submissions to a conference that could take 26 talking spaces. This year we got 24 submissions. So we see this kind of rise in submissions and interest over the year, and very well advertised. And then this year again a sudden drop. So I kind of wonder too about this sort of long death rattle that at least educators in Second Life are seeing. And I think that the move to things like Open Sim that you have direct control over is a really interesting idea.
Thanks, Paul. Excuse me. Um, yeah, I still believe that virtual worlds provide a number of affordances. I'm getting tired of using that word, but it seems to capture the uniqueness of this third dimension. I think we really haven't explored the so-called presence effect. Um, um, Terry just posted something I'll comment on in a moment, but it's hard to see virtual spaces going away, especially when I look at their use and uptake in younger generations. I know we've always used it as a barometer with in some cases limited predictability, but it just strikes me that this sort of 3D virtual space avatars is not sort of going to go away, and maybe Terry's comment about the problem with our virtual spaces is that we really we don't really have a structure within the institution to sort of see that the space is nurtured, and we've always been as a group struggling. Well, every year, we have to look for money to keep the island going. And if you're just scrambling to sort of keep things afloat, it makes it hard to plan any long-term research projects, to sort of look at where we can be successful with virtual spaces. And there is that learning curve that still presents a bit of a problem. Voice, is still a bit of an issue. Although it's still the same thing. It's I don't know if we'll ever get foolproof technology around voice, VoIP technology. I mean, Skype works, I guess, well, but Skype kind of fail, or it really. I think the onus is on the user to make sure their equipment is working well, and but maybe that will take time. Yeah, so VoIP is nice, but it really seems to be hit and miss on. Doesn't matter what you're using. Adobe Connect, Second Life, Skype. Thanks. It's me. The I think tutors have a real big role, or potentially big role, or we've opened up our worlds, or we tried to make it available to everybody at the Basca, but it's a bit of a challenge to get people in world, and also the onus is on us to some extent to sort of demonstrate why people should be in here, and what benefits they could sort of see immediately from their participation. So yeah, Paul, it's hard to sort of see where virtual spaces can up with your sort of existing goals and objectives and pedagogy to that extent as well. I still, for myself, we got involved in conversational agents, and there's this notion called the persona effect. The idea that simply embodying a conversational agent within an anthropomorphized form, creates an effect that improves learning outcomes or learning experiences. And the evidence for the so-called persona effect is equivocal, I guess. It really depends on a lot of factors, most of them visual in nature. But we think in virtual spaces too, we need to sort of demonstrate, or at least investigate this kind of presence effect. Does having a virtual 3D avatars, does that provide a greater sense of social presence? Turn on learning in ways. So I find some parallels between the so-called persona of an immersion effect. Is there value to being immersed in a virtual world? And maybe this lines up with some of your work on experiential learning, Paul. Comments that have come through. Yeah. No, I mean maybe, and I've come to accept this, that it not ready for prime time. I've always places are not quite ready for prime time. Class teaching, but oh, that's well, maybe call about the immersion effect. It strikes me that it would be maybe easier to assess than it'd be nice to understand the theoretical mechanisms behind, so one can design that immersion. So, how many people here have been in OpenSim? The center has created. Before we get too down Second Life, um, you know, uh, um, uh, we have this space. It's 4 times the size of our existing island here. It has uh, much capacity for 16 times the size of this island here. Capacity for far more two avatars, and I also, of course, something we can run on our own servers. We don't have to scramble for money. We do need to, and that's something we need to work on. But I'm very excited about the future of OpenSim at AU. And if you want, we can world right now. I wouldn't mind if I understand if uh, um, uh, or Trevor's having problems with getting into OpenSim. By the way, I've a AU issued laptop to, and I'm also running this into uh, uh, to stream my screen into Adobe Connect, and it all seems to be working fine. Um, the technology requires nice graphics and graphics and a fast processor to run Second Life, but that's not the case. I mean, the hardware has really caught up, so I'm very pleased. So I wouldn't mind going into Sim just because I am streaming this into the Adobe Connect session, which is being recorded. We do have at least one person in Adobe Connect. Hi, Gloria. Thanks for coming. If you can hear me. Um, and some of the vastness and the opportunities within OpenSim. I should also say too that uh, working on a project that you know into my teaching, into my Can you hear me?
I can. Go ahead.
Hi, Gunnar. Uh, Slade?
Yep, that's me.
Slade was, there's a band called Slade.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's an old band.